Apple crisp is just about the easiest and healthiest dessert that you can make. I kid you not, I probably ate 4 pans of this stuff in a matter of weeks when I was pregnant with our second child. No idea what that was about. Anyway, if you like apple desserts that showcase the apples instead of covering them up with too much sugar, this is the dish for you. You'll need a few things for making apple crisp. First, you'll need a baking pan. Now you can use a regular 9 by 13 inch baking pan. We're going to use a disposable aluminum foil pan because it's deeper and allows for more room for crisping on top. Keep in mind that the apples will reduce in size as they cook, so the deeper the pan is, the deeper your finished product is going to be. Now notice that we're showing you 2 pans here. The larger pan is going to be the pan that holds the apple mixture while we're preparing it, and the smaller pan will be the one in which we bake the apples. You'll also need a small or medium-sized knife for slicing, a bird's beak paring knife, a nutmeg grater, and a cutting board. Next, you'll need aluminum foil and some measuring cups. And finally, some latex gloves to help you mix the apples without getting your hands all oily. As for ingredients, you'll need 1/2 of a peck of apples for 1 pan of apple crisp. This is about 5 to 6 pounds of apples per pan. You'll also need some old-fashioned thick rolled oats and some flour. If you're gluten-free like BG is, Bob's Red Mill makes great gluten-free rolled oats as well as gluten-free oat flour that you can substitute instead of traditional all-purpose flour. You'll also need whole nutmeg, brown sugar, salt, and optional here is some xanthan gum. This will help keep the apple mixture solidified and prevent water from separating from the apples. And finally, you'll also need to use some kind of fat. Now we're going to use some homemade lard that we made, but you can also use butter or Crisco or even oil. I use grapeseed oil for all those pans that I ate when I was pregnant, and I gotta say, it was fantastic. Before you do anything else, turn the oven on to 425 degrees and wash your apples. After you've done that, you're ready to get cutting. For a 9 by 13 inch pan, you're going to use about a 1/2 peck of apples, which is about 5 to 6 pounds. Cut the apple into 4 slices, like BG is showing you here. Note that when the knife is coming down, that he's rocking it back and forth. Anytime you're cutting, you should never just push the knife straight down. It should be sliding front to back. Then, line up 3 of the cut sides and cut the apples into strips like he's showing you here. Then, turn the whole pile sideways and cut again. Then, repeat for that last slice of apple. Here's a side angle shot of that same process. Now, as we've mentioned before in our video on applesauce, it's best to use a variety of apples for making great apple crisp. In this batch of apple crisp, we mostly used Fuji, Rome, Golden Delicious, Pink Lady, Jonagold, Cortland, and Melrose apples. Keep in mind here that it's not important that the apples are all cut to the same consistency, because differently sized apples will result in more texture, with some apples being softer and some being a little firmer. But you do want them to be cut to a small enough size like BG is showing you here, because they need to be small enough to pack down in the pan and cook through. Some estimates on time here. It took BG about 15 minutes to cut up a whole peck of apples, which is enough for 2 9 by 13 inch pans of apple crisp. In this video, I'll give you the proportions to make 1 9 by 13 inch pan, but just know that BG is doubling those measurements to make 2 pans. Once you have all your apples cut, put them in a mixing bowl or a large pan like we're showing you here, and sprinkle a pinch of salt over top of the apples. Then, for one 9 by 13 inch pan, add a 1/4 cup of flour over top of the apples. Next, take a whole piece of nutmeg and grate half of it over the apples. Be careful here, you don't want to grate your fingers, so take your time doing this. Now, put on your gloves and mix everything thoroughly. I gotta say that using gloves like this is such a time saver, especially for later on in this process when you're mixing the oats with the fat. I really despise having my hands covered in butter or oil and then trying to clean all of that off for however long it takes. In a different mixing bowl, pour in the oats. For a 9 by 13 inch pan, we usually use about half a bag of Bob's Red Mill gluten-free oats, which is about 5 cups. After that, add a 1/4 cup of brown sugar. Now you're going to add some kind of fat here, whether that's butter or oil or lard. What BG is using is lard. Now how much should you add? Well, it depends on how much it takes to bring your ingredients together. In this pan, we ended up using about a 1/2 cup of lard, but you might use more or less, depending on how much apple crisp you're making. Some tips here. In order to make a good crisp, you'll want everything in the bowl to be in contact with the fat that you're using. You'll know that you've added enough fat if the mixture barely holds if you squeeze it together. If you can make a ball with the fat that you've used, you're using too much. If it doesn't hold together, you're not using enough. This is a great shot of what a good consistency of fat in apple crisp looks like. It's not making a ball, and it's not completely falling apart. You can see that all the oats in this pan are making contact with the lard. Next, you're going to grease your baking pan all along the bottom and all along the sides. Next, add your apples to the pan. Next, add the oats on top of the apples. Make sure that all parts of the apples are covered with the oats. Now, you're going to bake the apple crisp in the oven at 425 degrees for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, check to see how brown the top is. When the top is as brown as you'd like, slide the pan out of the oven enough so you can cover it completely with foil. You don't have to secure the sides, just turn the foil down. Then you'll need to pierce the top of the foil to allow some steam to release to keep the top crispy. We usually bake for another 40 minutes. Look for the apples to start bubbling and for some steam to be coming out of the sides of the foil, like you see here. Then you know that you're done baking. Next, take your apple crisp out of the oven and let it cool until it's room temperature. If you'll eat it all in a day, you can leave it out on the counter. If you're going to eat it after more than a day, you should definitely refrigerate it. That's it. That's how you make apple crisp. Thanks for watching today. If you missed our episode on making applesauce, you can link to it here. Coming up, buckle your seatbelts. BG is going to show you how to make smoked pulled pork, and I'm sure he'll wax away endlessly about his strong disagreement with the Kansas City Barbecue Association's definition of barbecue. Not kidding. Subscribe to us, like us, and let us know what you'd like to see us make. See you next time on Our Final Freezer.